Partnering with us on our big Unwrapped digital event focused on the satellite and NTN opportunity is Mavenir. And I'm delighted to welcome Mavenir's Chief Technology and Strategy Officer to Mobile World Live. Bejoy, Pankajakshan, it is good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to see you again, Justin, and thanks for having us.
So to start with, Bejoy, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you envision NTN really contributing to the strategies of operators in the near future.
So it's an interesting area right now for operators, right? Because they're trying to get to ubiquitous coverage, especially in context of having to serve the rural areas. In the past, what we have seen satellite communication be used for by mobile operators has primarily been for backhaul connectivity. And there's not many use cases that eventually hit the end user. Versus now, increasingly, you're seeing operators partner with satellite providers for direct-to-device communication. And even on the direct-to-device communication, in the past, it used to be very custom solution. It wasn't a 3GPP defined solution. So there's been very prominent implementations using what's called GMR, the Geo Mobile Radio Interface, which is a version of GSM, but then it required its own custom brick type phones. But now with direct-to-device and reusing some of the terrestrial spectrum that the operators have, you're getting to the point where you're able to serve satellite-based communication directly to the end user. And initially, what we are seeing there is the capability to support IoT devices and text messaging. And it's especially in the context of emergency text, right? You may be lost in a remote location, and today there's no terrestrial coverage. So how do you call for emergency help? And that has been very prominent. And Apple actually brought that more into mainstream with their partnership with Global Star. And now you're seeing increasingly different operators around the globe have partnership with the likes of SpaceX or AWS Kuiper, a bunch of different players in this space. And that's where we see the biggest traction right now in terms of supporting initial text messaging. Now, Mavenir is also working some areas on how you do voice over these narrowband IoT carriers, which is a separate topic. But in general, what I see for the industry is a need to actually serve a larger base as you go into remote areas that's not covered by terrestrial and therefore being covered by satellite. And initially, the focus would be on IoT, but then moving to more text messaging and later data and voice as well.
So clearly loads going on in this space, Bejoy. Mavenir, you are really synonymous with the open RAN market. So tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that Mavenir is undertaking in the NTN space.
Yeah, so we are synonymous from the open RAN space, but I just want to caveat that as a company, we've been around for 20 years. We have a huge installed base for our core products, including IMS Voice and Packet Core. So in that regard, as a software company, we have a play in NTN today for not just the RAN. We also have good presence on the Packet Core side, because when it comes to NTN 5G connectivity, it's not just about providing RAN service, it's also about packet connectivity. So the EPC 5G core that we have is also installed in a few customer accounts. Not a lot of them are public at this point. One of them, of course, is TerreStar, with whom we have a public PR that's already done, and the information is public, and that covers both the RAN and the core. So for us, opportunity-wise, it's providing products into the NTN space to cover new use cases that I mentioned earlier, be it IoT or device connectivity. And we do that for both the RAN and the packet core.
And I guess the key question here as well, Bejoy, is when are we going to see commercial NTN-based services rolled out on a mass market basis? What kind of timelines do you see there?
So I'd say it really depends on the type of service, right? As I discussed earlier, the initial use case around IoT, we already starting to see that, and the device chipset support it. So the likes of Sony, you've got Qualcomm, Samsung, Apple, those devices already support that capability. And this is done today in what's called a bent pipe or a transparent mode of implementation, where the signal hits the satellite, and it could be a geo implementation or LEO or a MEO implementation, but then it's kind of transparent. The communication between the device and the radio is transparent. It goes uplink and then downlink. You just need to accommodate that piece of the architecture. But in future, what we're looking at is more regenerative, where parts of the radio sits on the satellite. And that communication method will have its own advantages, but then the chipset ecosystem has to be ready to support that architecture, and the specs have to evolve to be fully standardized to support those regenerative architectures. And that we see is the release 19 sort of time frame. So I expect the initial chipsets and devices to support that to come out next year. and a wider scale rollout of these services coming 2026, 2027 timeframe when it comes to the more advanced services or NTN. And I just want to hit one other point on Open RAN, right? So I mentioned earlier that Mavenir is providing RAN and packet core, but there are a few distinct advantages when it comes to the Open RAN based implementation of NTN solution. And it has to do with the fact that first, it's an open architecture, which means you get more flexibility into the different ways in which you could implement it. So which parts of the radio sits in the satellite, which parts sit on the ground station. You have more flexibility in how that's implemented. You could run this on the ground side with common COTS hardware. You don't need custom hardware to come from a traditional net vendor to support this architecture. And very importantly for Open RAN, because it's open, you have this whole concept of radio intelligent controller, the RIC. You could have applications that are developed in this space, which solves to some of the key challenges that we see right now in the NTN space, primarily around how is the spectrum going to be managed, how is the delay going to be managed, and other aspects around handover. How do you better optimize the handover between terrestrial and non-terrestrial? And there are applications being developed in the horizon for third parties to address this. So it's not just going to be IPR that's going to come from Mavenir, because of the whole RIC concept and the app concept there. We could also rely on the ecosystem to come up with new innovative ways in which to solve the well-known challenges of TN and TN integration.
Bejoy, it is always good to catch up with you. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on how Mavenir fits into the NTN space and the potential of the market as well. Thanks for joining us on Unwrapped.
Thank you.